Hey, what's up, everybody? KI Coaster Guy here. Did you miss me over the last few months? Because you know what? I missed all of you. Speaking of things I've been missing, today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 former Kings Island attractions. That's right, folks. In honor of the park's 50th anniversary this year, we're going to be taking a good old-fashioned trip down memory lane. Just a quick note, though, before we get into things, I'll only be including rides that I actually experienced. So even though I'm sure some of you would rate Screamin' Demon or Enchanted Voyage, or perhaps even Smurfs Enchanted Voyage pretty high on this list, since I haven't personally experienced those, they won't appear here. Though, chances are actually pretty good that at some point I rode Smurfs as a very little one, and I'm also pretty sure I went on the monorail at Lion Country Safari at some point, but those were both so long ago that I have absolutely no memory of them, and so they'll be regrettably excluded. To give you a rough timeline, everything appearing here will be something that existed in the park from roughly around 1990 to 2019. In any case, folks, with that out of the way, let's get into it. The thing with Vortex for me is that by the time they took it down, I was basically over this ride. I know there are a lot of people out there who really loved Vortex all the way through, and I totally respect that. But as far as I'm concerned, its best days were well behind it. Regardless, it's been the better part of 3 years now since Vortex closed, and I still feel like the park looks weird without it. Prior to the 2020 season, I would argue this coaster was as much a part of the Kings Island mythos as the Beast or the Racer. And until something takes its place, I'll never get used to that big empty spot where it used to sit. Well, I didn't enjoy this ride as much during its later years. There was a time where getting your first ride on Vortex was a rite of passage around here. Some kids like me would get off of it for the first time, not so much excited about having ridden Vortex, but about having finally conquered a looping coaster. After a number of rides, though, I did learn to love Vortex for a long time, and I think I'll miss it more and more as the years go on. There are probably many of you who don't think this ride belongs here. I gather that for most fans of the Kings Island Action Theater, it's Days of Thunder they think of most fondly. However, despite opening at the park in 1994, I was personally completely unaware of the Action Theater's existence until 007 opened 4 years later. Even so, it's hard for me to imagine I'd hold a ride about NASCAR racers closer to my heart than a motion simulator ride featuring everyone's favorite English spy. Keep in mind, License to Thrill was operating during what is likely the height of James Bond's popularity for my generation, opening less than a year after the release of the smash hit 007 GoldenEye video game for Nintendo 64. Unfortunately, the only footage I can find is of the queue and pre-show, and I do hope one day we will be able to view this video from this ride in its entirety. If you do manage to come across footage for this, please link me in the comments. Now, while the ride shows no footage of Pierce Brosnan, the Bond film star of the time, in his title role, it does include Desmond Llewellyn as Q and Judi Dench as M. Regardless of what you thought of this ride, you have to admit the name is pretty great. But I remember the ride itself being a great time as well. This ride wasn't a Kings Island exclusive, however, operating at other Paramount parks like Carowinds, Kings Dominion, Canada's Wonderland, and California's Great America. The ride also ran at the London Trocadero and Fox Studios theme park in Sydney, Australia. Now, before we move on to the number 3 slot, I just wanted to take a quick moment to sincerely thank everyone for the support you've given this channel. It seems like just yesterday I was thanking you for 1,000 subs, and now we're rounding the corner on 2,000. So crazy. I couldn't be more excited about this, and if you're someone just coming across this channel for the first time, consider joining our community by hitting that sub button, as well as giving this video a like, and together we can defeat the algorithm. And with that out of the way, let's get back to it. Okay, look, as an avid viewer of coaster/amusement park YouTube, and more importantly, as a card-carrying member
of American Coaster Enthusiasts,
I'm well aware that this ride is perhaps universally viewed as something of a lemon. I mean, let's face it, this ride had problems from construction all the way through its operation. It's unfortunate, but Son of Beast was an abject failure. I mean, hell, this was the biggest coaster edition Kings Island had received in over a decade, and it didn't even make it to its 10th anniversary. And from the beginning, this thing was viewed by some as a painfully rough attraction. However, as someone who was, 13 at the time, and so all of my bones were made of rubber, I don't remember this thing as the painful experience some others do. Sue me. I wasn't all that knowledgeable about coasters back in 2000, but I remember really enjoying this ride when it was new. Above that, though, what I remember most fondly of this ride is the hype surrounding it. This was an exciting time to be a Kings Island fan. Even the last addition to the park, Orion, which didn't get all that much love from the coaster community, was talked about a lot around here by the general public. But I don't think it came even close to the level of hype surrounding Son of Beast in 1999. We had Montel Williams come to the announcement to plug this ride. That's right, the Montel Williams. What's that? You're too young to know who Montel Williams is. Okay, well, shut up. Son of Beast opened as the tallest, longest, fastest, and only wooden looping roller coaster in the world, among other records. It's also the first and only wooden hypercoaster ever built. While I know Kings Island has picked up a few token records since, this was the last major attempt the park made to build a truly record-breaking ride. On top of that was the lore surrounding it. I always thought the idea of a sequel to The Beast was super cool, and I hope Kings Island tries it again. I do sometimes wonder what could have been if RMC was more established back in 2009 when this ride closed. What kind of crazy attraction could they have made out of Son of Beast? Quite possibly nothing, I guess, as it seems the very structure of the ride might have been a bit sus, but still, a guy can dream. Much has been made of Cedar Fair's recent efforts in regard to theming on their new attractions, and rightfully so. But if there's one Kings Island ride that had the best theming of all time, I might have to say it was Tomb Raider. If you live somewhere in Southern California or Orlando, you might look at this and think, okay, I don't really know what the big deal is. But for a regional park near Cincinnati, Ohio, this was simply nuts. And it's stuff like this that sometimes makes me wonder what the Paramount parks could have turned out to be had they been given another decade or so to gestate. As it turns out, of course, this was just a Huss top spin inside of a building with a lot of theming around it, but I certainly didn't know that at the time, and this thing was dope. The queue, the pre-show, and the actual ride were all extremely impressive for Kings Island at the time, and I know I'm not alone in really missing this ride. The good news is, during the day one lunch and Q&A at Coaster Stock 2022, a fantastic event by the way, Park VP and General Manager Mike Kuntz expressed agreement that something needs to be done with the Tomb Raider show building within the next few years. While it's not entirely up to him, here's to hoping that Kings Island will be able to do something with this location during his tenure. And before we get to the top spot, a few honorable mentions. King Cobra. I don't have many real memories of King Cobra, except the fact that when this ride was in the park, it was a coaster for the brave among us kids. The handful of rides I have on this took place during the last couple years of its life, and I'm sure if I was to ride it today, I would not be the biggest fan. On the other hand, King Cobra remains the only stand-up coaster I've ridden, and I do remember the sensation being quite unique. So while a lot of theme park fans are eyeing SeaWorld Orlando's upcoming B&M stand-up coaster doubtfully, I personally think if B&M has figured this thing out and can provide this experience in a comfortable way, I'd be very interested in giving the whole stand-up thing another go. Backwards Racer. I once asked you all in this channel's community tab what you'd most like Kings Island to do, and by far the most popular answer was bring back the Backwards Racer. Despite the fact that it's been over a decade since Cedar Fair made the decision to change Racer back to Racer, the Backwards Racer remains one of the most popular Kings Island attractions of the past. It has been my understanding over the past couple of years that the Backwards Racer was forced to face the front based on some kind of notice from the manufacturer of the trains, Philadelphia Toboggan Company. And I did try to confirm this with Kings Island spokesperson Chad Showalter a few months ago. However, he unsurprisingly chose not to confirm or deny this speculation, saying only, in 2008, but the decision was made to run both sides forward. We don't have any plans at this time to change the way that it's currently configured. I understand his restraint here for sure, but it would have been nice to have a final answer over whether or not reconfiguring the ride is even really an option. Oh well though, the backwards racer lives on in the hearts of Kings Island parkgoers anyway. Le Taxi. Like the upcoming number 1 attraction on this list, Le Taxi was a ride I rarely, if ever, missed as a child. Always a good time taking one of the old cars for a spin on this classic track at the park. Luckily though, Kings Island opened a new version in 2019 that I think really improved the Coney Mall Midway, so it's all good. Firehawk. I really quite enjoyed this coaster around the time it opened, though on one of my early rides on this, my beloved LG Envy slipped out of the pocket of the basketball shorts I so brilliantly decided to wear and proceeded to bounce around inside the ride vehicle and presumably fell outside of it at some point during operation. It was returned to me half destroyed and barely functioning after the park closed on that fateful day in 2007, and I'm not sure I was ever able to completely forgive Firehawk for my stupidity. In addition to this, I'm pretty happy with the coaster that replaced it. To this day though, Firehawk remains the only flying coaster I've ever ridden, and hopefully I'll remedy that soon. R.I.P. Firehawk. And finally, no list of former Kings Island attractions would be complete for me without what was undoubtedly my favorite ride at the park growing up. At number 1, Phantom Theater.
So, you wanted to see the theater, did ya?
I'm pretty sure I could count on one hand, with fingers left over, the amount of times I came to Kings Island and didn't ride this during the time it was operating. They simply don't make rides like this anymore, at least not at regional parks. Going to see the Maestro and taking a tour of this haunted opera house was always a highlight of my early visits to the park. As a kid, I found this D.H. Morgan dark ride genuinely creepy. Looking back at it now, it definitely seems a bit more on the goofy side, and the denizens of the theater don't look quite as alive as I remember. Still, the day I came to the park for the first time to discover this ride had been removed, I was truly a bit sad. And by that point, I was an adolescent during the stage where you feel a bit too old for something like this. Now, while certainly not up to the standards of something Disney would put together, Phantom Theater remains a beloved attraction in the history of Kings Island. I always loved the design of these characters, the music is great, and this is something uniquely Kings Island. It isn't a property owned by someone else that they have to go out there and license, so I'm very hopeful that we could see something more at the park honoring this old attraction in the near future. Also, during the Coaster Stock 2022 Q&A, Mike Kuntz was asked about Boo Blasters, the current dark ride that occupies the former location of Phantom Theater, and whether we could be expecting an update to that ride soon. And while he of course couldn't make any promises or give an exact timeline, it sounds like we may be seeing something new in that spot within the next 5 years or so. With the new Phantom Theater show Kings Island is doing for the 50th, on top of all the blog posts and bits and pieces of Phantom Theater merch the park has been selling, bringing back so many memories for people, it's my sincere hope that they'll bring this ride back in some fashion. But whatever goes in that spot, the Phantom Theater of the 90s will always have a special place in my heart. Speaking of Kings Island attractions, I did a ranking the coasters at Kings Island video last year, which might interest you. Should be popping up on your screen right about now, along with another recommendation if that doesn't pique your interest. Anyway, folks, that all clear means I'm up, and out of here. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.